Hi, my name is Vicki Tashman. I'm an author of historical fiction beginning readers for ages 5 through 8. And today I'm going to be reading Alexander Graham Bell Answers the Call. I love history, and this is a book about a person that invented something that we all use every single day, the telephone. So I'm going to start reading this. This book is called Alexander Graham Bell Answers the Call. It's written by Mary Ann Fraser, and it's published by Charles Bridge. There's lots of cool photos in this book of old telephones. This is way before cell phones. Alexander Graham Bell Answers the Call. Let me just get to the first page here. Okay, busy street. From the beginning, the world all around spoke to Alexander Graham Bell, and he listened. His family called him Alec. To his eager ears, the hustle and bustle of 1840s Edinburgh, Scotland, was a symphony of every pitch and tone. He even wandered into a field once to see if he could hear the wheat grow. Each new sound whispered to Alec's curiosity. How was he able to hear? What made one noise different from another? Why could he hear some sounds but not others? Alec's father also had lots of questions about sound and hearing. Melville Bell was a speech therapist. The hisses, grunts, and chants of his students spilled from his study, where he would work on his visible speech alphabet. The symbols of this alphabet were different from the English language alphabet. They represented every sound made by the human voice. Alec eagerly memorized all 129 of them. While Alec trained his ears to the sounds of speech, his mother heard little of it. Eliza Bell had lost most of her hearing as a child. Still, she was a gifted portrait painter and pianist, filling their home with art and song. To hear notes, she lay an ear tube across the piano's soundboard. Alec had to speak into the same ear tube for his mother to understand him. The awkward device acted like a hearing aid, but a poor one at best. How he wished he could find a better way for his mother to clearly hear his voice, the piano, and the world around them. Along with his brothers, Melly and Ted, Alec learned to play the piano before he could read. Sometimes the music rang in his mind for days. He'd lay awake at night, puzzling over how instruments produced notes. How were he and his brothers able to hear the notes when his mother needed the aid of an ear tube? His father explained that sounds are vibrations. Unlike his mother's, Alec's ears were able to collect the vibrations and send the information to his brain. Of course, Alec had to test this notion out for himself. Could other parts of his body sense sound vibration too? In his deepest voice, Alec spoke close to his mother's forehead. By feeling his breath and the vibrations of each sound against her skin, she could understand many of his words without the ear tube. His experiment had worked. But at noisy gatherings, his mother still strained to make out what others were saying. There had to be a better way to include her. Alec's answer was to use a two-handed manual alphabet to spell people's words with his fingers into his mother's palm. At last, she could be a part of the conversation. While Alec loved to study and experiment with sound, oh, what fun he had showing off with it. When friends and relatives visited, he pounded the piano keys and belted out songs with Ted and Melly. Together, they performed puppet shows and mimicked animals. Alec's favorite voice trick was to race about the room as if chasing a bee. Buzz, buzz, buzz. He would then muffle his buzzing after pretending to catch the insect in his hands. For a boy with a head full of questions, it was an exciting time. It was the age of invention, and people everywhere were searching for new ways to solve old problems. Alec was no different. One day, at a flour mill, Alec wondered if he could find a better way to clean the grain. He lined the inside of an old churn with stiff brushes. With each crank, the churn's paddles pushed the grain against the brushes and whisked away the husk. Alec listened to the sweeping noises of his first invention. What else could he invent? A talking machine was the answer. Together, he and his older brother, Melly, rigged up a rubber tongue, tin tube throat, and voice box. The downstairs neighbor thought the sound from the boy's contraption was a crying baby. Alec's noisy pranks didn't stop there. He trained the family's terrier to growl on command, and then moved its mouth and throat to produce different sounds. To everyone in the room, it sounded as if the dog was saying, "How are you, Grandma?" Alec's days of playful experimenting ended when he and his brothers became sick with tuberculosis. Proper medicines for this disease had yet to be invented. Only Alec survived. It was a difficult time for the Bells. The family moved to Canada. There, the loss of Ted and Melly inspired Alec to do more with his life. He set off for America to make his family proud. In Boston, Massachusetts, Alec became a teacher for the deaf. He taught his students sign language, lip reading, and visual speech. He also invented an alphabet glove. Students pointed to the letters printed on the glove to spell out messages. Each innovation whispered to Alec's curiosity. What more could he do? Alec often wrote to his family about his lessons and ideas. but his letters took weeks, sometimes months, to arrive. The telegraph was faster, but it was expensive and sent only one message in a code at a time. There had to be a better way for people to communicate over long distances. Alec was determined to find it, but he would need assistance. At a local machine shop, he met a talented electrician and mechanic, Thomas Watson. Thomas was the perfect person to help him with his experiments. Together, Alec and Thomas began designing a device that could transmit more than one message at a time, each with a different vibration pattern or pitch. Oh, sure, there were failures, lots of them, but a childhood spent experimenting with his brothers had taught Alec that the only real failure is to quit. He and Thomas kept at it. Months passed until one day, Thomas adjusted a spring on a jammed transmitter. From the other room, Alec's keen ears heard a faint twang through the receiver of their multiple telegraph invention. That little sound roared to Alec's curiosity. Instead of transmitting the beep beeps of dots and dashes, could he transmit the sound of a voice? Could he design a speaking telegraph? Nine months later, Alec finally had a patent protecting his idea. Now all he needed was a working model to prove it. Day after day, each model they tested failed. Finally, Thomas set up a receiver in one room. Alec rigged a liquid transmitter in a separate room. They closed the doors. Alec spoke into the cone. "Mr. Watson, come here. I want you." Thomas burst into the hall. "Mr. Bell, I heard you. I heard every word." The speaking telegraph worked. His voice had traveled from the transmitter along a wire and to a receiver at the other end. Through the rest of the night, Alec and Thomas fiddled with the device until they got it just right. Alec danced a wild jig in celebration. The telephone was born. From the beginning, the world all around spoke to Alexander Graham Bell, and he answered the call. That's the end of the story, but at the end of this book, there's lots of information about Alec's various inventions, and here's a timeline of his life, and here's a picture of what he actually looked like. I hope you enjoyed this book, and I can't wait to read you another one. Bye.